Hello, everyone. This is Cathy again with Backyard Columbus, and I thank you for tuning in today. I myself am pretty excited because it is before 10 o'clock p.m., and I'm doing a podcast episode, so I'm pretty excited about that. I try to squeeze it all in, and this week I have taken the week off from my normal job, which is a hairstylist, to plan my life, to plan 2026 goals, hopes, dreams, all crammed into 1 week. So here's hoping. It's a pretty extensive list. I have high expectations and low expectations that they will get done. But today, I would like to share with you a recap of 2025, the highs and lows, if you will, of everything that happened in our backyard. And hopefully you can learn a few things, maybe plan some things that you would like to have happen for you in your yard, and we'll take it from there. So the lows, let's just start with the lows. So it's actually not a big list, I'm happy to report, but in the vegetable garden department, tomatoes, lettuce, and kale. So what went wrong? The tomatoes. And for me, I'm trying to learn as I do this. This is, as I've said before, this is one of the reasons that I love doing this podcast, is because I do the research or just think back of what could have been better, and it helps me to do things better moving forward. So tomatoes, some of this was out of our control. Here in Ohio, we had a very wet, cool start to the season, and that really delayed the tomatoes from ripening, actually from the plants growing at all. And these were brand new seeds, because you can certainly blame me for not keeping seeds the way that I should, although it's kind of not rocket science, although I'm sure it gets a little more sciencey than I think. But these were brand new packages, so there shouldn't have been anything wrong with them. And what ended up happening is when it got hotter later, then they all of a sudden started becoming like real tomatoes, but they were green, clear until the end of October. And by then we usually go on vacation then, and then we just lost them all because a frost hit them or whatever. The other thing that went wrong with the tomatoes is rats or squirrels got a hold of them, and they never, of course, just take the whole thing, and then you don't have to see the remnants. They come along and take a chunk out of it. Now, I shouldn't be eating after squirrels, but I'm certainly not going to eat after a rat. So who knows what did it, but they just take chunks and then leave the rest. And yeah, so that was a bummer. The other thing that is within our control is we have raised garden beds. And in Ohio, here in central Ohio, we have a lot of clay soil. So it is overwhelmingly better to do raised beds. There are several varieties of tomatoes that you can actually raise in pots. So if you have a much smaller space or limited time and abilities, you can raise tomatoes in pots. But as a side note, I would encourage you to look at the back of the package, because this is very important if you're going to grow tomatoes in a pot. There are such things in tomatoes called determinate or indeterminate, and it will state that clearly on the package. If you want to grow tomatoes in pots, I would try very hard to get a determinate type of tomato, because those kinds of tomatoes stay in a more bushy, compact growing form, instead of an indeterminate will grow all wild and crazy, and you're going to have a hard time keeping it. It'll stay in the pot, and look, you can flop all over the place and still grow tomatoes. That's not the problem. If you want it to look nice, that's where the problem comes, okay? So if you want something to stay nice and tidy, then get a determinate tomato. But we have all of our vegetables in a raised bed, so usually 16 square feet, or we combine two of them and make 32 square feet. And I think that the soil, despite the fact that I added organic fertilizer to it, I don't know that that was enough to take the place of manure, compost, brand new garden soil, all those things. I think it has worn itself out. I did not add enough of our compost into it this year, and so I think that it really didn't have enough nutrition to grow tomatoes well, or any of our other vegetables. So this spring we will kind of redo all the beds, add all of the elements, and a great resource of what you can add into those garden beds is the Square Foot Gardening book by Mel Bartholomew. I will hopefully remember to provide a link in the comment or in the notes of this episode so that you can easily remember that and find it. But it is a great resource. I actually underutilize that book. It is the Bible for square foot gardening, for raised gardening beds. And again, raised garden beds are by far the best thing that you can do here in Central Ohio, and the best way to keep control of the weeds and just make everything tidier and easier to take care of. Lettuce, there's a wonderful thing called a gutter garden, and I loved our gutter garden. My husband built it for me. So basically, imagine you take gutters, whether you can find them or buy them. They aren't that expensive, but you can either hang it from a porch, patio, whatever the heck you want, a tree. It doesn't really matter as long as it's getting good sunlight. Or he built it on a frame and then hung it from a fence. A west fence, but it faces, where we hung it, it faces the east, so it did not get baked by the west sun. All right, anyway, this thing has been producing well for a lot of years, but we took it down. We wanted a better place for it, and our neighbors were replacing their fence, and so we took everything off the fence. Anyway, we don't want to put it back on their brand new fence, and so I decided to put the lettuces in a raised cedar bed. And so the cedar bed is about waist high, and that's fine. And they would have done well, but I made the mistake of also planting tall flowers in with them. And I think the flowers sucked the nutrition away from the lettuce, and then they overpowered the lettuce, and then the whole thing just went to hell in a handbasket, and I ended up with a big bed of marigolds, African marigolds. So they're pretty, but I wanted my lettuces. So I'm going to put the gutter garden back up next year somehow, put it kind of in the same general area that it was, because it did really well. So east facing did well for me. It didn't get beaten by the rain either, but a gutter garden, look it up. There's a million examples online, and they really add a really cool element to your garden design. Anyway, that was a bummer. And then I'm probably the only person you're going to hear say this. My kale bed failed, and I was a mess. Like, I eat kale every single day through the summer. It does a body good, and I don't mind the taste of it. One could definitely say I'm not a foodie, so I kind of eat to live. And so I have kale all the time. Well, this kale bed has been rocking it out for years. Well, this year I did 3 rounds of planting. Like, the first package failed, the second package failed, and the third package, meaning I spread brand new seeds every single time, and they failed. I honestly don't know why, other than I think the soil is spent. So one would be wise, and that means me would have been wise, to test my soil to see what it was short of. I should write that down. I should write that down on my notes that I have for this episode. Test soil. That way I won't forget. That is very important if you've been using your soil for a while. If you're adding brand new compost and vermiculite and garden soil and what did I already say? Compost, manure, all those things, you don't have to worry about that. But this bed is pretty old, and like I said, it has been growing kale year after year after year. One maybe could argue that I should have done some crop rotation with the tomatoes and all of the things that we grow. What are those things called? Not eggplants. I can't believe the zucchini and squash. Boy, oh boy. Good thing it isn't 10 o'clock, huh? Anyway, but in a raised bed, the research that I did said that really isn't necessary, like the old farmer way of doing it, so I wouldn't even worry about that. Anyway, oh yeah, and then the rats. So, and this should be on my negative list, we disassembled our whole chicken coop compound, a coop, a run, all of the things, an enrichment center. We disassembled it all because that area is prone to flooding, number one, and then it got everywhere, okay? And the rats, Norway rats, which, again, I'm going to say this for the 80 millionth time, having chickens do not attract rats. The rats flooded our neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods because there was a construction project, a road project, and as soon as they hit the sewer lines, the rats dispersed and flooded the neighborhood with rats. I never had a single rat before they did that construction project, and I had chickens for years before that, so hopefully I've put that to rest. But now you can't get rid of them. Rats are highly adaptable, like cockroaches. They just never go away no matter what you do. And I don't want to spend every second of the day trying to kill rats. I don't actually think that's fun. But so we spent some money buying a whole new chicken compound. And so I got a chicken run. So that's where they run around during the day off Temu, if you can believe it. It seemed to be the best choice for the least amount of money, but it was still structurally sound. And we bought a shed from Costco. Actually, that is incorrect. I was going to buy a shed from Costco. We got it from Amazon from the same company that made the shed. And this time, the shed is quite large. Boy, it's probably 3.5 or 4 times the size of the old shed that my husband built, which was beautiful. But this is even better. And it is made from that plastic tech decky stuff, and so it won't rot because that is an issue, especially where it floods. So we laid a whole concrete bed. I don't know how big it is, like carport size. It was big. Put the shed on it, put the run on it, and then made the chickens a little fort under some trees. And so everything was great. We didn't see any rats. Thought we got rid of them. No, we did not. They just relocated to a different part of our yard. So they've tunneled under my zinnia bed now. They made a huge nest just literally in the middle of our landscaping on this side of our house. And a funny little story that I didn't think was so funny, actually. As we tried dry ice again, which would be my preferred method, but you really need to have rats in an area where there's not a lot of holes, okay? So imagine a space with one hole going in and out. If that's perfect, because then you just shove all that dry ice in there, plug the hole, and then they get gassed. Nobody has to suffer or anything like that, okay? But that is never how it goes. They always have multiple escape routes. And so anyway, we thought we had all of the holes plugged. And as we were plugging the holes, right in front of my face, I'm telling you, 1.5 feet away from me, 3 or 4 rats just jumped out of one hole and ran into the other one like pew, pew, pew. It was comical. I wish I had my camera on, but it was very frustrating at the same time. So anyway, that is definitely on the low list because all of this that we did to try to eradicate the rats in our yard, which I kind of knew wasn't going to happen, they never went away. I can't even say they're back. They never went away. And then I went out last night just to check on the chickens, and they have actually, in the thinnest part of the shed where we have a solar panel door allowing them to go in and out of the shed, a rat chewed a hole right through the thinnest part of the plastic and apparently has been getting into the shed. So the whole thing just sucks. But on that note, we will go to the highs. And so this is where it's more fun. So I will give you the list and then a little description. The highs were a lot, and I'm happy to report that because that would be a real bummer if the lows counteracted the highs. Butterflies, flowers, chickens, wildlife, and edibles. So most things in the yard went well. Butterflies, we had a lot, and more specifically, we had a lot of eastern migratory monarch butterflies. I say raise, and if you're not watching this on YouTube and just listening to it, this is in air quotes, I raise monarch butterflies. What I do is I compulsively go out in the summer, late summer, August, when the monarchs arrive here in Ohio. And I look at all of the milkweed in the yard on the underside of the leaves, which is where the females lay their eggs, because milkweed is the host plant for the monarch butterfly, and that means that is the only plant that the butterfly can lay its eggs on, because when those eggs hatch and they become caterpillars, that is the only plant the caterpillars genetically can eat, okay? So they're not like us. They can't eat lots of things. They can only eat milkweed. That actually gives them a chemical defense against many predators, all right? Anyway, if you're really bored and want to go down a hole, there's a book called Monarch and Milkweeds, and it gets into heavy chemistry about plant biology. It's a lot. It's not a curl up read, I will tell you that. But anyway, so I capture the eggs. I cut off the leaf, do all kinds of things like keep it in a little tube of water. I won't bore you with it right now, but the point is I put it into protective custody in a butterfly cabinet on our patio. It's kind of conservation, kind of science. I love watching the process. In the wild, if I did nothing, they will all do their thing, but less than 10% of monarch eggs make it. Okay, so that is not very many. So that means if 100 eggs get laid in my yard, which 100 eggs get laid in our yard, actually way more than that, less than 10 will actually make it. So I just help it along. It's not hurting anything. There are definitely some folks, and very educated folks, that say you should not do that. You should only capture 10. I'm going to be honest, my argument is hardly anybody does this. I mean, monarch populations are down. There's some statistic that if all monarchs lived, if every monarch egg lived, we would be inundated with like billions. Come on. I mean, most people don't even plant native plants, so I think it's going to be okay if I capture all the eggs in my yard and put them in protective custody. But last year was a really terrible year. I think the weather pattern had a lot to do with it. Past that, it's the same old stuff. Pesticide use, lack of habitat, lack of milkweed, lack of native nectar-producing flowers, which is what all butterflies sip nectar. Okay, and not every flower produces nectar, so that's a problem. That is why you may or may not have heard everyone preaching and singing the praises about native plants. You can have other plants as well, but if you have also native plants, then butterflies will have something to sip, okay, on the butterfly front. Anyway, last year I only released 30. And that was a real bummer. This year, it was like 95 to 105 that flew away. Not all of them made it to Mexico for sure, but hopefully one did. You just never know. I did not tag them this year, but anyway, that was a real high. The other high was flowers. I mean, we have, I'm being literal, thousands upon thousands of blooms in our suburban yard. And we have a typical suburban lot. Maybe it's a teeny bit wider. I mean, it's probably a little bigger than an eighth of an acre. It's definitely not a fourth of an acre. Okay. We live in a cul-de-sac, so that kind of yard where it's a little wider and a little deeper, but I by no means have quote unquote property. Anyway, the main flower, cutleaf coneflower, if you have a space, like a decent space to fill that loves full sun, that gets full sun, cutleaf coneflower is really great. But where it's at, and I say this all the time, is asters. If you loved mums, please don't plant those. Just put them in a pot on your porch. Please don't plant them in your yard. They're worthless. Now, if you love mums, then look, by all means, plant them wherever you want them. But then I'm going to beg you to add asters to the list. A New England aster, there's off the top of my head, I don't know how many kinds of native asters there are. There are loads. So the difference is they are in the same family, but mums might be pretty, but they do nothing. They don't produce nectar and they don't produce pollen, whereas asters look very similar. They come in a variety of colors and sizes and all the things, but they produce pollen and nectar well into the fall for the late season bees and butterflies, especially the migratory monarchs coming, as well as our own monarchs, the eastern migratory monarch from Ohio. I mean, not from Ohio, but living in and going through Ohio. But they come from as far north as Canada, and they have to pass through here, Ohio somewhere. And it is very helpful if they have a source of nectar to drink from, and that would be asters. So just put that on your list for 2026. All right, moving on. Chickens. Chickens were awesome. They laid a load of eggs. We got green queens this time, and this is their third year, I think. Maybe their second or third year. Either way, they are knocking it out of the park. I mean, this breed, they are cold tolerant. They are agreeable, they're fun, they're beautifully colored because they all look like a litter of mutt puppies. They're all different colors and a little bit of different styles as well, but they really lay well. Anyway, so very happy about that. Wildlife, like all of it. I mean, not the rats. Rats and squirrels I'm not excited about, but the dragonflies, the butterflies, the bees, the beetles, praying mantises, like I'm kind of obsessed with those now, dragonflies and mantises. We only have one kind of mantis here in Ohio. And by the way, if you see a nest, a praying mantis nest that is half the size of an egg, if you have it in you, smash it or put it in the trash if you don't have it in you. If you see a praying mantis that is the size of your hand or a little bit smaller, kill it. And if you don't have it in you, get someone else to kill it. because those will kill our native mantises. And our native mantises, a Carolina mantis, is about the size of my index finger only. Not all the way to my wrist, just the size of my index finger. Okay, so anybody bigger than that is either a European mantis or more than likely a Chinese mantid. And while they're cool, like if I had it as a pet, that would be cool, it's not cool in my yard. Allegedly, I don't know that I believe this, but a Chinese mantid can take down a small hummingbird. So, ew, that would be terrible. Okay, but because we have provided a habitat, then we attract all of these things. And dragonflies have found us because, number one, they eat mosquitoes, and everybody has mosquitoes. They aren't pollinators, okay? So it's not like they're going from flower to flower. They are carnivorous, so they're looking for insects and they're looking for mosquitoes, but they breed in water. And so we have 3 small ponds, and I mean, they're very small, but they're great. And they lay eggs in our pond every year. And I mean, we are at between 2 busy intersections, and I've said this before, if you build it, they will come. And so all of these dragonflies and damselflies find our ponds and lay eggs in them. So that's really pretty fun. Anyway, sorry. So the wildlife was extensive, prolific, and very fun. I probably added 2,000 more pictures to my camera roll. It's pretty pathetic. And then last but not least, edibles. I had to take a look here and make sure my computer wasn't messing up, because I would probably shed some tears if I was babbling and none of this was being recorded, because I still am under 10 p.m. Anyway, edibles. Not the kind of edibles that some of you are getting giddy about. I don't do that, but edible landscaping. There is a great guy, and I know his name is going to escape me now. He wrote an edible landscaping book, Michael Judd. Anyway, great guy. Does really cool stuff. His edible landscape book and a talk about it really changed the way that we have designed our yard in many ways, especially in the front yard. And so pawpaw trees and gummy berries, Goumi berries, are all because we met Michael. And our pawpaw trees, it's taken a long time, I will tell you that, probably year 8 or 9 before they started producing fruit. But boy, oh boy, if I didn't work full-time, I would probably have a better grip on my pawpaw fruit. But once they come on and they start to ripen, it's kind of all at once within the same week. So I just figured out, well, because Michael made a video about this, I started freezing them, and I think I still have some from last year because, again, I'm not a foodie, but I do love growing stuff. But anyway, the gummy berries, you cannot go wrong. I'm going to do a different episode about this, but as far as front yard plants, a gummy berry bush, they are sweet little, kind of the size of Mike and Ike's, you know, and they're slightly sweet. One variety is a little bit tart, and slightly sweet, but I love them. They're beautiful bushes. They get a buttercup yellow teeny flower in May, and it smells so sweetly. I just love it. It's one of my favorite things to smell in the yard. Anyway, they did really well. So that is it. That is the highs and lows. Kind of a long episode, but we do have a lot going on in our yard. It keeps us busy but happy, because everyone should have a hobby. Everyone needs to get outside more, and that is why gardening, in whatever capacity it is, whether it's flower gardening, pollinator gardening, vegetable gardening, edible landscape gardening, whatever, just get out there and try a little bit this year. And if you have any questions, you have any comments, just shoot me an email, cathy@backyardcolumbus.com, and I would really appreciate it if you would share this with a friend or 2 or 7. So thank you for listening, and have an amazing day.